And good morning. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the review session. Sorry, I forgot to put my camera up this morning. How y'all doing today? Thanks for coming. Looks like we have a few people on the broadcast. Got 3 of us here. Hi, folks. If you're here and want to check in, go ahead and type hello in the chat bar. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started on this exam review. So, let's see. Hi, Daniel. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Fantastic. I'm going to go to my whiteboard if you don't mind. Pull up the exam a little bit. Let's see what we got. We got this exam right here. All right, and we got Juliet as well. Hi, Juliet. We still need to get together, Juliet, you and I need to get together and have that talk I told you about my exercise and weight loss plan. And I am definitely serious about conveying that to you because you've expressed interest twice. So I'll definitely get back to you. But thanks for coming today. Good morning, Lewis. Thanks for coming as well. Okay, fantastic. Pretty good crowd here. So let's go ahead and get started. You should be able to see my whiteboard today. So this exam is going to be 55 questions, 60 minutes. It'll be multiple choice, matching, true, false. And I think there is even one ordering questions where I want you to put some things in the right order. It's going to cover Chapter 8, Chapter 9, Chapter 10, and Chapter 11. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. I'm going to go ahead and start talking about these questions now. Let me check. Everything looks good on the whiteboard. Fantastic. Okay. Let me go ahead and flip to the next page. Okay. So, let's move it up just a little bit. There we go. Chapter 8. 15 questions. Chapter 8, 15 questions. Okay, if you remember, this one is about intelligence testing. Okay. 1. Okay. Let's say one question on the history of IQ testing. Okay. And then let's see. Okay, there's one. Oh, okay. History of IQ testing. Subfields that use IQ tests. One question on that. 1. There are 2 questions on ratio. versus deviation method of calculating IQ. 2 questions there. Then I have, let's see, it looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 questions about the IQ distribution. Okay. No, and there's 1 question about average, 1 about gifted, and actually, let's see. 2 about average, 1 about gifted, and 1 about intellectual disability. Okay. You know what? I probably should have, I'm going to go up here to this one and say 2 questions. History of IQ testing, definition of IQ. Okay, of intelligence. No, actually IQ and intelligence. It's sort of a broad question. Okay, so we've got 4, 8, 9 questions so far. Okay, 1, 2. You know what? I would say 2 questions for subfields now that I'm looking at it. And 1, 2. It looks like 2 questions. 2 questions on the different kinds of IQ tests. And 1 of them is match the IQ test to description. Okay, 1 of them is going to be like that. So we've got 6, 10, 12. And then I've got 3 questions on newer theories of intelligence. Okay. 2 of them are on identify the theory, and 1 of them is I want you to know the problem with these newer theories. Okay, so that's 6, 10, and 5. That's 15 questions. Does anybody have a question on Chapter 8? Is there anything you want me to explain to you? Is there anything that you don't remember hearing? Is there anything I can talk about? I'm more than happy to do that for Chapter 8. Okay. I'll wait for a second to see if we have any. Excuse me. Excuse me. Usually I just sneeze 3 times. It's 4 times. To the whiteboard. Okay, you should be able to see the whiteboard now. Okay. Chapter 9. Okay, I'm going to move that up just a little bit. Okay. Chapter 9. Motivation and emotion. And I have 15 questions. Am I writing too small? Can you folks see that? Am I writing too small, or should I be writing a little bit bigger? If you would, give me some feedback in the chat bar and let me know if you can see what I'm writing. I can write it a little bit bigger if you want. I'm just trying to do a neater job of writing. Okay, 1, 2, 2, 2. Okay, so there's 2 on the general theories of motivation. There is a chart that compares the theories. Day 1 of lecture. Okay, actually, let me see. That would have been Wednesday. So today's the 8th, 7th. That would have probably been 6. Ooh, it's like June 29th, maybe? Question mark. Okay, 2 questions there. Okay. Okay. 2 questions on the qualities of motivation. Remember, we initiating, sustaining, directing. I don't know if you remember that, but we talked about that. I've got 2 questions on the qualities of motivation. Okay, so let's see. That's that and that and that. Okay, 1. One question on those classic theories. All right, which classic theory am I describing? And if you remember, that's when we were talking about the James model versus the Cannon model versus the Schachter model. I told you about those 3 classic theories of emotion. Okay. Okay, then 1. 3 question on the brain areas and emotions. Okay, so remember, I want you to know frontal and amygdala. right? What do they do? Okay, so I've got you 2 questions on that. Let's see. 1, 2. Developing emotional control in children. There's a slide about training your kids to have good emotional control. Okay. 1. One question on heat regulation. That is a motivated behavior. And we talked about that, heat regulation. Heat regulation behaviors. It's a question about the heat regulation behaviors. Okay. It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 2 questions on Maslow's theory of motivation. There's one on the 7 universal emotion expressions. And one question about Alfred Adler's theory. We talked about him early in the semester, early in the chapter, the lecture, excuse me. Excuse me. Let's see. Actually, there are 3 questions on Maslow. Okay. Okay, and so that is 15 questions on chapter 9. Okay. Chapter 10, sexuality. Remember, that was 1-day lecture. 10 questions. Okay. If at any point you want me to stop and talk about something, don't hesitate to do that. And I'm trying to direct you as specifically I can to the areas in the book that you ought to be looking at. Okay. So just let me know if there's anything else you want to know. I'll be whatever you want to know. Okay, let's see. Chapter 10, motivation. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, there's a question on chromosomal abnormality. Remember, I had a whole chart of chromosomal abnormalities related to sex. I've actually got, take that back. I've got 3 questions on chromosomal abnormalities and sex. There's 1 question on genetic versus biological sex. There's 2 questions that ask you to understand the difference between sexual attraction versus gender identity. Sexual orientation, excuse me. Okay, 2 questions on that. Okay, let's see. What in the world is that one? Okay, 1 question. 1 question. Match the sex-related terms. Remember we talked about gender identity, gender role socialization, sexual orientation. We talked about gender roles. These terms. Okay, so I've got 1 question that relates to those. 1 question of primary versus secondary sex characteristics. Okay. Let's see. Okay. You know what? Question about, excuse me. Let's see. And then 2 specific questions on sexual orientation. Learned, so what are the factors that are associated with increased likelihood of being homosexual? We talked about sort of where homosexuality comes from. People have wanted to know why are some people homosexual and some people not homosexual. We had a chart in your chapter, one of the PowerPoint pages where I talked about that, and I've got 2 questions related to that. So if you do the math, that's 10 questions. Okay. Any questions on chapter 10? Okay, so that's 40 questions in. Now we have chapter 11. Chapter 11. Health psychology. 15 questions. All right, 15 questions. Let's go ahead and move that up just as high as we can. And let's go to the questions in the set. Okay, full text. Let's see. 1. Two questions on Hans Selye's model, the GAS. Okay, I want you to know the 4 stages in that model. Oh, I take that back. 3 questions. Know the stages and be able to put them in order. Okay, there's 3 questions on that. 1, list the hormones related to stress, let's see, 1, 2. You know what? I'm actually going to say that there are 4 questions on Hans Selye's. Because that one's kind of a question related to Hans Selye. Okay, let's see. What subfield of psychology? Remember, in the first lecture on last Wednesday, the first thing I did was tell you about the kind of psychology that was interested in health psychology, or actually, it's health psychology. Health psychology. Okay, let's see. Let's see. You know what? 2 questions about the subfield of psychology. Let's see. There's a question on major life stressors. We talked about those. And you know what? Let's say major life stressors versus daily hassles. Okay, so there are questions that ask you to identify. I have 1 question about major life stressors and 1 question that asks you to differentiate between what a daily life hassle versus a major stressor is. 1. Let's see. Okay, question. Stress and getting sick. 1 question. Let's see. Okay, so what are the positive outcomes of exercise? 1 question on the positive effects of being married. So there are slides where I talk about each of these qualities. Oh, one question on the biopsychosocial model that we talked about, the things that affect your health. We talked about these three qualities as predictors. This was day one when we were first talking, day one. Okay, let's see. Okay, there's one question on problem focused coping versus emotion focused coping. Excuse me. And then there's one question on the final impact of stress. What causes us to feel stress? Okay, and if you do the number there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 questions. Okay. Okay. All right. So that's 55 questions. You got 60 minutes to do the exam. Hopefully, you know exactly where to go and look in your book. Things I want you to focus on. So with chapter 15, I want you to focus more on stress than the smoking and the weight loss and the other stuff, okay? All right, that's all I have to say for today. That's my review. Do you folks have any questions you'd like to ask? You know, I make lots of copies of questions, and I'm always changing questions around. So one of the things that I messed up on yesterday's homework was I had asked you to give me select the primary sex characteristics on the homework, and then I had the homework set up so that the correct answers were actually the secondary sex characteristics. If any of you noticed that on the homework yesterday, that problem has already been fixed. So the two structures that are supposed to be listed as primary sex characteristics based on your notes have now been changed, so they're the right answer. Okay, the brain areas. Clarification on brain areas and 3 emotions. All right. If you remember, whiteboard here, emotions. So emotions are based on some sort of input, right? And that input comes in through this thing called your thalamus. And that thalamus is going to send information to your amygdala. And that's what we would call your fast emotional response. And then your thalamus also sends information to your frontal lobe. And this is the what we would call the slow path. And then that comes down through your amygdala and helps change your emotion. This is the slow path. Now, so whenever we get input about something that might scare us, it comes in through our thalamus, which all of our sensory experiences come in through our thalamus. This thalamus sends information simultaneously to our frontal lobe and our amygdala. Now, our amygdalas give us our amygdala is there to give us a quick response to anything in our environment that might scare us. So our emotion, our amygdala gives us what you might call your primary animalistic emotional response. If you've ever seen a little baby cry, their amygdala has been activated by their thalamus and they can't control their emotions. But what happens as you grow up and get a little bit older is your frontal lobes start to myelinate. And what happens is when your thalamus receives information, it sends it to the amygdala and it also sends to your frontal lobe. Now, your frontal lobe takes a little bit longer, but it more carefully looks at what is making you angry or scared or happy and makes a better judgment about whether or not you should be angry or happy or scared. Okay, now what happens is as you get a little bit older and your emotions mature, Lewis, things will come in that will initially make you angry. They'll make your amygdala want to get angry, but your frontal lobe has learned that this is not the time for you to be angry. You have learned emotional control. And so your frontal lobe takes over through its slow path and changes the function of the amygdala so that you don't start crying. When was the last time you cried because you couldn't get your way, Lewis? It's probably been since you were 2 years old, right? You now realized your frontal lobe tells you that just because I'm angry that I didn't get my way, that does not mean I should throw a crying fit. So your frontal lobe adjusts your emotions. Now, what I'm going to do on the test is ask you to know what happens when you destroy these parts of your brain. If you destroy the frontal lobe, the person will lose the ability to control their emotions. They'll act an awful lot like the 2-year-old kid because their amygdala is still working and they still have things coming in that activate their amygdala, but they no longer have their frontal lobe to control and adjust their emotions. Okay? On the other hand, people have found that people with damage to the amygdala have trouble recognizing emotions in other people. They actually become sort of blind to basic emotional responses. And in animals, they haven't done this in humans, but in animals, destroying the amygdala causes them to lose their instinctual fears, their fears of predators. So we know that full emotional response depends upon the function of the amygdala and the frontal lobe. Your amygdala gives you that quick emotional burst of emotional response, and your frontal lobe adjusts your emotion based upon your learned knowledge of what this means. Does that make sense, Lewis? And you're asking about 3 emotions. What exactly do you mean about 3 emotions? I'm not exactly sure what that question is. Okay. Was that related to the 3 emotions, or was that a different question altogether? right, now there were 3 classic theories of emotion. Is that what we were talking about? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Daniel. Yes, I'm just noticing it. Okay. I'm sorry, Daniel. Yes, I'm just noticing it. I apologize, Daniel. Sorry. Sometimes I don't do a good job watching the chat. Yeah. The problem with it's about the theories that were in the table for chapter 8. Yes, where I was talking about when I was talking about Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence, and emotional quotient. Those are all new theories of intellectual functioning. Yeah, that the problem with those, so for those of you who watch the review, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the answer. The problem with those theories is they don't have tests that they can use. IQ tests have problems. We know that they show ethnic differences that we don't understand. We know that they're only really good for school for school related intelligence. They don't relate to any other ways in which humans can be clever, like being creative or having common sense. They don't test that, but we do have tests. IQ tests are useful in school. On the other hand, these other theories are very broad in their definitions of intelligence, and they incorporate things that modern IQ tests don't measure, like creativity, emotional control, and common sense. The only problem with these newer theories, Daniel, is they don't have a test that will help us in any way. It's a great theory, but it doesn't help us. IQ tests are actually very useful for diagnosing learning disorders in school. That's really about the main use of the best use of an IQ test. Did that answer your question, Daniel? Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry about that, man. I didn't mean to ignore you. Any other questions? Any other questions that I can answer? Just let me know. Go ahead and type them in the chat bar. It was great to see everybody today. I do want to thank you for coming. I hope that you found some answers that will help you on the next exam. Good luck. It should now be available, and that exam is due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Okay? You folks have a great day. The discussion board, I will have the discussion board graded sometime today. Are you talking about the week 7 discussion board that's coming up or the grades from last week? Lewis, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I will tell you that week 7 discussion board should already be available. If it's not, let me know and I will fix that. Next week's is not available. Okay, good enough. I will get that. There must be a problem with the date, so I'll get that set and make sure that that's available in the next hour or so, Lewis. Okay? Hey, folks, y'all have a great day. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a text or an email. Good luck this week.